Imagine this. She's surrounded by a crowd of men, each vying for her attention, and yet, she notices you. What makes you different? It's not how you look. It's not what you say. It's a subtle force, a quiet control over perception that draws her in without effort. Most men can't even see it. Most men never will. Today, you'll discover how to wield that force, how to become the choice she cannot ignore, and why Machiavelli would have called it genius. Machiavelli understood one unshakable truth. Perception is reality. People respond not to facts or explanations, but to what they believe is true, and women are no exception. They don't choose a man merely for who he is, they choose what he represents. A man who embodies confidence, mystery, and self-possession becomes more than a person. He becomes a symbol of something they desire, even if they cannot name it. Most men fail because they live in the opposite world. They chase, they plead, they overcompensate for what they lack. They flash their emotions like neon signs, hoping someone will notice. And she does notice, but not in the way they imagine. She notices their need, their weakness, their dependence, and it repels her. You, on the other hand, operate differently. You stop. You observe. You speak softly with your presence, letting silence carry weight. Calm, composed, unbothered, you create an invisible gravitational pull. She notices this difference, often before she even understands it. She starts to measure herself against you, wondering almost unconsciously, who is this man who doesn't need me, but somehow I feel I need him? That small, silent spark of self-reflection is the beginning of desire. Predictability is the enemy of fascination. Men who follow patterns, who respond exactly as expected, vanish into the background of her mind. They are forgettable. The man who occasionally disappears, who appears with quiet confidence at unexpected moments, who surprises without effort, becomes unforgettable. Imagine a man she barely saw yesterday, now reappearing with a subtle smile, a calm remark, or a glance that lingers slightly too long. That unpredictability stirs curiosity, and curiosity is dangerous. Once her mind begins to fixate, once she starts wondering why she notices you differently than anyone else, desire quietly roots itself. It is no longer about what you say or do. It is about the tension, the uncertainty, the invisible signal that you are not easily grasped, not easily claimed. Neediness is subtle, but lethal. A man who clings, who seeks validation, who makes his attention obvious, immediately lowers his value. Scarcity and independence communicate worth far more effectively than words ever could. When a woman senses that your attention is not guaranteed, that your time and presence are not commodities to be spent freely on anyone, she begins to crave it. She begins to test the boundaries of your availability, to notice the moments when you withhold yourself, when you do not chase, when you simply exist as someone separate, untouchable. Every step back, every pause, every silent moment of self-possession heightens her interest. The more independent and self-contained you appear, the more she subconsciously associates you with value, with power, with something rare and precious. Desire is never handed over. It is never a gift. It is earned quietly, invisibly, in the subtle mastery of self, in the art of presence, in the careful manipulation of perception. This is not about force or words. It is about timing, about reading the currents of attention, about positioning yourself in a way that makes her choose you of her own accord. The man who understands this does not need to perform, does not need to chase, does not need to plead. His power lies in the calm, calculated display of self-sufficiency and mystery. Every interaction, every glance, every silence becomes a tool to shape desire. She notices not the words he says, but the space he occupies, the aura he exudes, the impression he leaves behind long after he is gone. In essence, this is the Machiavellian mindset, the understanding that attraction is a game of perception, that desire is cultivated through self-mastery rather than performance, and that influence, quiet, invisible, relentless influence, is more potent than any act of chasing or persuasion. When you internalize this, you move from being one of many men competing for attention to being the man she cannot ignore, the man who exists as a quiet standard, a benchmark of value against which she measures everyone else. And once you reach that level, the game changes entirely. You no longer chase desire, it chases you. The truth is simple, yet most men refuse to see it. Women always have options, endless options. The illusion of choice, however, is exactly that, an illusion. She will not choose the man who chases, pleads, or performs. She will choose the man whose value is undeniable, whose presence alone communicates worth without a single word. Desire is drawn not to effort, but to perceived excellence, to a man who seems to exist on a higher plane than the crowd surrounding her. When she senses that you are rare, that you are not easily obtained, that you operate according to your own rules, she begins to consider you, not as one option among many, but as the standard. Value is not something you announce. It is something you live. A life rich in experience, abundant in skills, layered with social proof, and grounded in unshakable confidence becomes an unspoken weapon. She notices, instinctively, without conscious awareness, the men who stand apart. She does not hear it in your words. She feels it in your presence, in the ease with which you navigate life, in the subtle signals of competence and independence that radiate from you. The man who builds himself beyond the need for approval or attention becomes magnetic precisely because his value is self-evident. Emotion is another tool, one far more potent than words. A woman is drawn not to a man who begs for attention, but to a man who awakens something inside her she cannot name. Curiosity, tension, and controlled vulnerability stir her emotions, creating a subtle pull she cannot resist. She begins to wonder what he is thinking, what he feels, why he moves and acts in ways she cannot predict. Every silence, every glance, every carefully measured reaction becomes part of an invisible arsenal designed to capture her mind before her heart follows. Dominance in this context is not aggression. It is authority expressed calmly, quietly, uncompromisingly. It is the unshakable standard that says, I will not bend, I will not chase, I will not compromise my principles for approval. She respects a man who stands firm in his boundaries, because respect is desire in disguise. When she senses a man who cannot be bought, swayed, or pressured, attraction is no longer a possibility. It becomes inevitable. Consider this. If she knows she can have anyone, why would she pick you? Not because you begged, not because you performed, not because you proved yourself. She chooses you because you are not anyone. You are rare, distinct, and untouchable. Your life, your presence, and your mastery of self set you apart from the swarm of options she encounters daily. And the moment she realizes this, not consciously, but deep inside, the decision is no longer hers to wrestle with. It becomes inevitable. She will gravitate toward you, drawn by the quiet, undeniable signals of value and authority that you have cultivated long before she even met you. Nothing increases a man's value more than strategic absence. When you are always present, always available, always within reach, your significance diminishes. Scarcity, on the other hand, creates tension, and tension is the invisible engine of desire. When a woman senses that your attention is not guaranteed, her mind begins to race, her imagination begins to wander, and a simple thought creeps in. What if he isn't here tomorrow? That thought alone awakens desire. Limiting your availability is an art. You do not vanish completely, nor do you ignore for the sake of cruelty. The key is balance, enough presence to maintain connection, enough absence to stir uncertainty. She must never feel that you are desperate, needy, or grasping for her approval. The subtle difference between being absent with purpose and being absent from weakness is what separates the man she craves from the man she forgets. Selectivity amplifies the effect. Respond to her messages, her calls, her attention in a measured, intentional way. She notices when she is not the center of your universe. That absence of automatic gratification sparks curiosity, even obsession. She begins to think about you in moments when you are not there, to imagine your world, your life, and the quiet pull you have left behind. In her mind, she begins to fill the spaces you intentionally leave vacant, and imagination has a way of intensifying emotion in ways no conversation ever could. Humans desire what they might lose. Make her imagine a life without you, not as a threat, but as a subtle, unspoken possibility. When she begins to fear missing out on your presence, attention, or value, desire becomes involuntary. She is no longer pursuing a man she can control. She is drawn toward a man she subconsciously realizes is rare, untouchable, and irreplaceable. Remember, the man who is always there becomes invisible. He fades into the background because predictability is forgettable. But the man who occasionally disappears, who strategically withholds himself, becomes unforgettable. She does not chase him because he demands it. She chases him because she senses that without him, something precious, something she cannot define, might slip through her fingers. And that, quietly, invisibly, is the power of strategic absence. Words are not mere communication, they are subtle weapons. Each question, each statement, even the pauses you allow, carries weight far beyond the surface. In conversation, every syllable can shape perception, direct attention, and influence desire. The man who understands this does not speak to fill silence. He speaks to create impact. He lets words land precisely where they are needed, crafting an invisible architecture of influence that she may sense but never fully see. Questions are your tools of insight and alignment. When asked strategically, they reveal her values, her desires, her fantasies, and allow you to subtly reflect qualities that resonate with her ideals. You do not interrogate or dominate, you guide. You plant seeds of perception. You become the silent mirror of her unspoken aspirations, and in doing so, you quietly position yourself as the man who fits the role she didn't even know she was seeking. Guidance comes through calm confidence and unshakable independence. Your tone, your cadence, your willingness to listen without losing composure all signal control. You do not chase her emotions. Instead, you allow them to unfold under your rhythm, like a conductor guiding an orchestra. She may believe she is steering the interaction, but in truth, you are the one who subtly shapes the tempo, the direction, and the emotional weight of every exchange. Think of conversation as a chessboard. Each word, each gesture, each carefully measured reaction moves her closer to your influence. You anticipate her responses, subtly challenge her assumptions, and guide her attention in ways that make her feel understood, intrigued, and drawn in, all without her realizing that she has been quietly navigating the game you set in motion. She leaves the conversation believing she was in control, yet every step she took was guided by your presence, your words, and the invisible authority you project. Mastery of conversation is not about talking more. It is about shaping reality one word at a time. At the core of attraction lies a simple truth. Women choose not the man who chases, pleads, or performs, but the man who embodies ultimate value and stability. Choice is not about availability or effort. It is about perception. She evaluates, often subconsciously, who represents strength, independence, and the ability to fulfill needs she cannot articulate. The man who understands this does not compete for attention. He simply becomes the solution to her unspoken emotional equation, the presence she subconsciously recognizes as rare, reliable, and inherently valuable. Part of this mastery lies in allowing her to sense the cost of not choosing you. She must feel that a life without you is diminished, that attention, presence, and influence are not infinite commodities to be taken for granted. Yet this is never expressed through threat, manipulation, or desperation. It is conveyed through silent standards, self-respect, and calm detachment. The message is subtle, but unmistakable. You have cultivated a life and presence that she cannot casually replace, and in that absence of guarantee lies irresistible attraction. The invisible forces at play here are gravity itself. Composed detachment, unwavering standards, and quiet mastery of self pull her toward you without a word. Every glance, every measured response, every calm moment of autonomy increases your influence. She does not chase because you demand it. She chases because her mind and emotions have recognized something rare, something worth pursuing, and she cannot help herself. In the end, her choice is inevitable, but only because you have already chosen yourself. Your self-mastery, your independence, your subtle influence have set the stage. She is not coerced or manipulated. She follows naturally, almost involuntarily, drawn by the quiet power you have cultivated. The man who commands in this way does not need to fight for desire. Desire seeks him, pulled by the gravitational force of his own presence. In this final, silent truth lies the ultimate Machiavellian secret. Mastery of self precedes mastery over others, and when executed flawlessly, attraction becomes an inevitable consequence of your own power. This is not luck. It is not charm. What you are learning is Machiavellian strategy applied to desire, a quiet, invisible mastery that most men will never understand. While they remain trapped in the exhausting cycle of chasing, performing, and pleading, you operate differently. You understand the subtle levers of attraction: scarcity, presence, and silent power. You know how to make yourself rare, how to command attention without speaking, and how to let desire arise naturally through your absence, your composure, and your mastery of self. She may have countless options, but in the end, she will choose you. Not because you forced it, not because you begged or performed, but because you are the man who has already chosen himself. Your independence, your standards, your quiet confidence signal value she cannot ignore. Her attraction is not manufactured. It emerges naturally as a response to the invisible architecture of influence you have constructed around yourself. Most men will never see it. They will continue to chase illusions of attraction, blind to the forces that actually move desire. You, however, have glimpsed the truth. You now hold the key. Use it with discretion, precision, and patience. Let your presence, absence, words, and actions work silently, bending desire to your control. and watch as the world shifts around you, not because you asked for it, but because you have mastered the one power that truly commands attention: mastery of yourself.